Two victories won. I thank Brother Frank and others, elders in the house, for giving me permission to speak to you this evening. It's very, very important for us to know that as African people, part of our belief system is that when the body gives out, when the body returns to dust, the soul remains alive. We live and we die, and we're reborn as ancestral spirits. As African people, we believe in a continuous circle of life. Therefore, when we die, when our bodies return to dust, we become linked with the Creator as an ancestor. And as an ancestor, we're linked forever with our Heavenly Father. So this evening, sisters and brothers, let us remain linked with our ancestors. Let us call upon our God, however we know our God, as Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, Jah, Olamare, Isaac, or as Christian. Let us call upon our God and give thanks for joining our paths this evening. Ashe. We want the Heavenly Spirit to know that we are indebted to our ancestors. And we ask, especially for our ancestor, Dr Akbar, to teach us to be teachers of our children. Ashe. We ask our illustrious ancestor, Queen Mother Laura, to help us be revolutionaries for our people. Ashe. We ask that our sister, Shashay McIntyre, be with us this evening. We ask that she teach us how to learn, how to teach, how to be brave, and how to be true revolutionaries. Ashe. We ask our brother, Elijah Muhammad, to join us this evening. We ask him to remind us of how to live, how to eat, how to rest, how to protect, how to pray, and how to be good, brave, strong African people. Ashe. We call upon our beloved brother, Kwame Ture. We ask that he come here this evening, that he give us guidance, he give us support, and that he remind us that liberation is ours. It is ours to take by all means necessary. Ashe. We ask, finally, that our scholar, our teacher, our informant, Brother Amos Wilson, be with us this evening. That he stand beside our speaker. That he stand beside our chairman. That he stand with all of our black leaders so that they will know that their blueprints, his blueprints, and the footsteps of our ancestors will be with us always for protection, guidance, and support. Ashe. Ashe. God bless the children. Ashe. Thank you. Speaking well received, sometimes you may be at different venues and you see a whole host of people there. I've been places, I've seen some of our so-called leaders in presence, and everyone knows that they're there because they're flashy, they're loud, they're cackling, slapping each other five, etc., etc. All that's okay. But I think it's more important that we have leadership who is able to lead, instruct, direct, guide, support, encourage, uplift, without the need to be a political spectacle, a social spectacle, or a media spectacle. We're very, very fortunate that we have with us a leader who's not interested in photo We have our own media. Here at the United African Movement, each Wednesday, this is our media event. This is our television. This is when you will get the true news, not the daily news. You'll get a magnificent insight and analysis on what's going on in this society. More than anything, will be an atmosphere where we can love our sisters and brothers, where we can learn how to take pride in our race. And more than anything, where we can get the spirit to know that our liberation is at hand, that our black women, our children will be protected, that our black men will be supported. Sisters and brothers, I want you to stand up, meet and greet our champion, our journalist, our judge, our director, the chairman of the United African Movement. Please stand and greet Brother Austin H. Naim Akbar.
Get the new name by our new drummer there. We would have that before the night's over. Let's give them a warm round of applause again. Very pleased to be here this evening, but more importantly, it's always good to be able to recognize that we have young people in training. It is very normal now for young people to be at home watching television, putting mental grenades in their brains. You know, they talk about suicide bombers. There are a lot of Negroes out here, suicide bombers. You have to be very careful of some Negro you sit down with. They're wired to the teeth. So we talk about suicide bombers. Don't think one group just got a monopoly on that. There's a whole lot of black folks who are waiting to explode. But we want to thank our young people because they are indeed the future. And we want to make it possible for them to develop year-round. There's nothing great, I want you to listen to this. There's nothing greater than raising the next generation. Some of y'all are very quiet because when I ask you to volunteer, I can't find you. But there is nothing more important. One of the problems of black people is that we get the African Holy Ghost too late. You know, Negroes get the Holy Ghost like they get religion. When they think they get ready to leave, they want to get everything straightened out. And it's a little bit too late for anybody. The beautiful thing about developing young people is that they get an opportunity to be productive throughout their lives. And that is indeed what we need. We were in Atlanta, Georgia this past weekend at the State of the Black World Conference. And it was, I would say, when you Mr. Brown, well attended. It was well attended. People came from the four corners of the United States and beyond to be there. The state of the black world. Now, it's good that the English language lends itself to so many definitions of one word. The reality of it is that we are not a state. Like the Palestinians and the Kurds, we are refugees. Palestinians are a nation. The Kurds are a nation. But neither one of them is a state. A state has a government that is recognized by other governments. A nation, on the other hand, is simply a group of people with a common language and a common culture. And so, there's a difference between being a nation. We are a black nation, but we're not a black state. That's very critical. Unfortunately, some of us don't want to become a state. Some of us do not want to form our own government. Too many of us, unfortunately, want to hang on to the white man. And that's becoming clearer and clearer every day. But the white man today has his own problems. And he certainly carry around any excess baggage. So whatever your intentions were to hang on to whitey, you better come with an alternative plan. You know, when a ship is sinking, you throw off all excess baggage. When a ship is sinking, it is time for us to get off of this ship before it gets in deep waters. That's the real side. Some of us believe that when white folks talk about terrorism, they'll talk about somebody else. We're not aware of the fact that these laws that they are passing are not for Arabs. These concentration camps that they are building around the country are not for Arabs. You ain't seen. People do not like that. People do not like any situation that they don't control at all. They have no influence over at all. Now, I say that because some people just maybe take all this for granted. And some people may not know what the circumstances are and may not be concerned about the circumstances. And in some instances, what is going on here is bothersome to some people, whether they admit it or not. See, it bothers some of us that some people can have white folks outside of their lives. That's bothersome to a lot of people. But there's no question about it. I had asked Sister Dotson to come back tonight because she had a question there. I don't think she's here right now. She had a question there that she had passed out a few weeks ago concerning black people putting so much money in a fund in order to build things for their community. Now, one of the things that we clearly need in our community, and it's a shame that we do not have it in a city that is over 2 million Africans, is an independent place where we can meet without being concerned about white folks at all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Right? That's a prime thing. In fact, you know, it was I in the youth, there's very few churches in this city you count on one hand that you can go into and rest assured that whatever white folks say, it will have no impact on the preacher. It's a crying shame that 136 years after we left the plantation, white folks are still controlling our lives. And some of us ought to be so outraged that we want to build an institution so that we can lick our tongues out of white folks.
Yes.
But some of us, there ought to be some Africans in this city who want to build an institution that is theirs, that they do not have to worry about white folks making phone calls and putting pressure on other people.
Right. You're right, man.
And all these people in this town all want to do that.
You're right.
You see, the problem with politics in New York City is this, it's crazy. And I don't know why y'all get exercised about who y'all vote for every year when you don't own nothing. All right, you don't own a thing, and you can exercise over the next minute. Politics is about representing economic interests, and you have none. That's what politics is about, representing economic interests. You're going to talk about, man, we going to get a whole lot of trouble if Mark Green don't get elected. He ain't representing you anyway. Look what y'all did. You put Hillary Clinton in office. And she's operating against you in Zimbabwe. You got Chuck Schumer up there, and he's in whatever going on everywhere else but here. You got Elliot Smith, y'all put him in office, and he turned around on you.
That's right.
And the reason why they're not representing you because you don't stand for anything. All right, let's get real. But the only time I can make this speech is after an election.
Don't forget y'all right.
Because 2 or 3 weeks before the election, if I get to make this speech, y'all start throwing eggs on me. That's right. And you get into this trance every year. It's a cycle. You ain't got nobody in this town that's representing you at all. And you will get all exercise over the vote. Now, everybody was talking about this whole situation with Mark Green. Well, you know what my suggestion was? See, some of y'all said, well, since he has dissed us, we're going to vote Republican. Or since he has dissed us, we're going to stay at home this time. But I told y'all to get out the party totally.
Yeah.
But there's nobody following me.
Third part.
I told you to get out of the party and form your around the country, doing your people in, and them 10 nuclear warheads won't mean nothing to you. Y'all hear that? See, having 10 nuclear warheads will be absolutely meaningless. Why?
You ain't got nothing to shoot with.
Because you don't have a delivery system to move those warheads from point A to point B. You understand that? Everybody understand that? So don't tell me warheads won't mean anything. Because you don't have a delivery system in order to get them where they gotta go. Well, that's what politics is about. Politics is about not only having an issue, but having a delivery system to get your issue to its destination. Or to its target. Everybody understand that? So let's take, for example, right now, we into reparations. But we don't have a delivery system in order for us to achieve reparations.
You're right.
Now, I was out loud this week. If we'd been serious in Atlanta this weekend, we would have come out of there declaring that we had formed an independent black party to address black issues in all of the United States, and that would have been our delivery system. Everybody understand that? That is not hard. Everybody came out of there talking about reparations, but nobody came out of there talking about the delivery system that will give us reparations.
Talking loud and saying nothing. Talking loud and saying nothing.
Nobody came back and talked about that. As I informed you some time ago, reparations is a political question. It is not a judicial question. The Japanese did not get what they got out of World War II because they sued somebody in court. The Jews did not get reparations from Germany because they went to some court and sued somebody. The Indians did not get whatever they got because they sued somebody.
No.
Because reparation is not a judicial question. It is a political question. But we talk about all of these things, but refuse to get a delivery system in order to achieve. And nobody ever discusses that at all. Because the reality of it is that we are still wedded to the plantation.
Tell it. Say that again.
All right? We're still wedded to the plantation. Now, let me say this. Now, we know during slavery they did breeding. We know that. But what we don't know is that they were not just breeding us physically. They were breeding us mentally. Now, if you go back in the world, you know that all civilizations identify with certain animals.
Yes, sir. Think about it.
All right? All civilizations identify with animals. All right? Every civilization you know, even the United States, identify with the eagle. All right? That's their characteristics. Now, what they have done in this country, they have breeded us so that we are a crossbreed between the buzzard and the chicken. Where we are the crossbreed between the buzzard and the chicken. All right? That's what we've been breeding. And if you want to understand our characteristics, you want to understand how we behave, just understand how the buzzard and the chicken behave. All right? We have the mind of the buzzard and the heart of the chicken. All right? If you know anything about the buzzard and the chicken, you know everything about us. You know everything about us. What we would do, we would get a good thing, eat it to death. And then we would move on. We won't build anything, we just eat it to death. All right? On the other hand, if somebody throw us some crumbs, we don't wait for the chicken with the meat. We start fighting over crumbs. Have you ever seen chickens? Yeah. Have you ever seen how they in that little chicken pen and they all calm, but soon as they throw out some crumbs, chickens start fighting each other over crumbs. Ain't nobody else about the meat. Ain't nobody else about the meat. But see, this is part of the breeding that they have done to us. That's what they've done to us mentally. This is our real struggle. You know, chicken ain't getting ready to fight nobody but another chicken. All right? Now, two chickens, they're going to war. But the wolf shows up, or the fox. All right? Then they run for the tall grass. That's what we're talking about. See the definition. Other people say, well, you know, you should change your name. Well, we should. But we should not change our name to an African name. We should not change our name to an Arab name. We should change our name to Little Chicken. Black Sheep. Break it down. What about the wolf? Nasty snake. What about the wolf? I'm talking real. I'm talking real. See, when you come in here, you ought to come in here next week with the name of the animal that you best represent. All right? I want to stop calling you by whatever name you got at birth or any other name you got while you were alive. I want you to go home this week, think about who you really identify with in the animal kingdom, and come back with a sign around your neck. What about the turtle? What about the turtle? All right? What about the turtle? But if you're a turtle, then bring him in. Break it down. Tell it like it is. But this is real. This is real. We're in extremely difficult times. You see, if you look at America, then you realize that there may be different shades of terrorism. But the darkest shade of terrorism is black. Amen. All the way. Maybe different shades. Secondly, white people by definition cannot be terrorists. All right? Well, you name me one white man that has ever been labeled a terrorist in this country. Huh? You name me one white man in this country that has ever been labeled a terrorist, including Timothy McVeigh. All right? You got it. Only because. All right? That's the only reason why he is the only white man ever labeled a terrorist fighting for something they should not have been fighting for. But America is full of black terrorists. Now, turning, we ain't gonna talk about terrorism today, how we got to step about terrorism. They're talking about stepping out. Nat Turner. They're talking about stepping out Denmark Beeson. They're talking about stepping out first. Even Harriet Tubman was a terrorist. All right, let's understand that. When Harriet Tubman was going from one plantation to another, sticking a gun to your head, all right, sticking a gun to your head, like, oh, well, you gonna leave a plantation. All the way out, you'll get on a plantation now, get me a Uzi, and come in and straight go your brains out. That's all you leaving by force. Harriet Tubman was a terrorist, and the plantation owners gave a substantial reward and said, we want her dead or alive, but preferably dead. But preferably dead. You see, this is why when you hear Rumsfeld and all those folks talk about that life, all right, you know, you have to at least have mixed feelings about it. You just can't be gung-ho. You know, like every Negro in New York now, and New Jersey, and Georgia, and Alabama, everywhere, riding around with the American flag.
American flag. Made in China.
All right?
Made in China. Don't say American flag. Made in China.
Yeah.
Made in China.
Well, that's part of the World Trade Agreement. That's part of free trade.
Yeah, free trade, yeah.
You see, the reason why the South won the war, and the reason why Southerners are now in charge of the government, because all of the ideas of the South are now being embraced by the United States. You see, the North believes in protectionism. The South believes in free trade. And now they've gotten so far with free trade that the president wants a fast-tracking agreement where all power is consolidated in the president to decide how trade will be ascertained. The only time there was free trade when they were trading us. And even then, when we became so populated in Virginia and North Carolina, we were shipped down to Alabama somewhere. See, if you go check your birth certificate and genealogy and all that, you go all the way back, then you'll find out that although you may have lived in Alabama or Mississippi for the last 100 years, but the 100 years before that, they were shipping you out of Virginia. Or they were shipping you out of South Carolina. Or they were shipping you out of Jamaica or Barbados or some other island in the Caribbean. And just because you are speaking a different accent today, you really think y'all different. Yeah, you really think you're different. Just because you got a different accent. That's how wrapped up we have become. Now, I want to just talk about a couple other things real quick, then we're going to bring out the speaker on. What we're doing here on Wednesday night is important, but it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough because the level of brainwashing and mind control has been so substantial that it takes more than one night each in order for us to undo it. And some of y'all leave here and go to Showtime or HBO, and by tomorrow morning there's no evidence that you've ever been here. All right? By the time y'all I was up in the morning, nobody ever thought that y'all came out here and heard Dr. Akbar tonight. That's real. Now, if we're given a fact pattern, we have to learn how to think critically on the fact pattern. And if we don't know how to think critically, it just leads to confusion. And then the Daily Blues and all of these other papers, they take hold. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Now, when we went upstate on Black Solidarity Day, we did not go up there to White Plains to satisfy judgment. That's not what we went up there for. Confucius said, the beginning of wisdom is calling things by their proper names. That's very important. The ability to discriminate and not lump everything under one term is the beginning of critical thinking. The ability to classify. Now, when we went upstate, Black Solidarity Day, we were up there because judicial extortion was taking place. That's why we was up there. Judicial extortion was taking place. And what I mean by judicial extortion? Judicial extortion means when payments are being made by force. That's extortion. When your liberty will be not only curtailed, but curtailed because the enemy wants to sabotage your appellate rights by not being able to file an appeal in the first place, by having you in jail rather than writing a brief. Now, one of the hard things about the Brawley case has been is that one person has had to wear several hats. One person had to wear several hats. You see, not only did one person have to stand up for Brawley, but then the person had to do all the legal work. And you can't be in two places at one time. That ought to be very simple. Everybody understands, but obviously some people don't. You see, that's what you call critical thinking. Somebody who can really think and say, well, you know, being an advocate is one thing, being a lawyer is another, being this is another, but this person got to wear all of these hats. Now, what are the consequences of wearing all of those hats? See, that's critical thinking. That's the reason why it's hard for us to be involved in struggle if we are not prepared to engage in struggle. And that's the reason why I can come here and talk to you about struggle, because I know a whole lot about struggle, because that's something I'm doing every day. We start talking about struggle. I understand struggle. I understand what you have to do to prepare for struggle. Right. And to engage in it and the kind of strategies and tactics that you have to employ. Using everything from guerrilla warfare to direct confrontation. So I have a very good understanding of struggle. Paying that money was judicial extortion. It was not satisfying a judgment. Now I say that because right after they got the money, and it was on record for those who was there, we were supposed to be in court on the 16th. Now, we have not gotten any confirmation of that date. In fact, Judge Hickman, when he got back, he wrote a letter saying that, in fact, we are not to come up to Dutchess County on the 16th. And the reason why he did not want you up there is because this is all about mind control. You see, as long as the only information you get is out of the white man's newspaper, then that is controlling your mind. But if you had to come to court and hear me stand before Hickman and point out all of the criminal acts that they were involved in, then you have a whole new notion of what this is all about. So that's the reason why we have not gotten any notice yet. Now, right, if we don't get any notice soon, then I'm going to be writing every person who made a donation. Some of you complicated matters because you don't want to have your address. Some of you do not want to have even your telephone number, so that's complicated matters to some extent. But the reason why we asked you for that in the first place is because we were already thinking ahead. See, I already knew that Hickman was not going to let y'all come on the 16th. Because I knew that he could not afford for me to be in a position of exposing them in front of you.
Yeah, because all the money was gone. They spent all the money.
And see, now they have blown all the money.
Yeah.
But what they were not thinking about, Brother Davis, was the fact that I was thinking long range, as you call your name, because right after these holidays, after these pagan holidays, to get ready to kick off, y'all claim to be so Christian-like, and yet you're waiting for a big fat white man to come down your chimney and give you some gifts with your religious behind.
Jesus.
Not knowing that you're worshiping a pagan holiday. Jesus wasn't even born on the 25th. All right? His son wasn't born on the 25th. All right? But y'all gearing up for this white man to come down your chimney.
You really ain't got no chimney.
Well, brother said, well, they don't have no chimney. Well, that's where hallucinations come in again. We talked about that a moment ago. If there's no house, if there's no chimneys in the house, they're going to start hallucinating. Now, we will be suing for all of this money back because there's a serious crime that is going on here. I've already filed a serious complaint with the Judicial Commission asking them to do anything, including removing Hickman from the bench. All right, that's what I'm saying. See, I may be standing alone, but I'm standing. All right? I'm standing. And right after these pagan holidays, I'm going to ask everybody who contributed money to sign on to this lawsuit, where everybody's name will be on the lawsuit as a class. Suing for your money back because not only have they spent your money ain't even been protected. It was just stolen from you like everything else. All right? And that is not getting ready to happen. Not on my watch. See, the question is not talking about white man. The question is whether you're going to stand up to the white man. All right? That's the question. Question of whether you're going to hide somewhere in Harlem. Talk about white folks. Question whether you're going downtown and confront them. And that is exactly what is getting ready to happen. Everybody know me, I don't waste no time in the hood talking about white folks. I do all my talking right there on their butts. All right, that's real. See, again, that goes to hallucination. Y'all see some nigga on a soapbox, and y'all gonna see it start spanking banner. The red rockets flare. And all kinds of other madness. Let us all welcome our senior elder in the house tonight. Let's give a warm round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Akbar. Let's give it up one more time. Now, in addition to this lawsuit and yours being prepared early January, because I'll be working on the papers. The only thing I'll need is your signature as a class thank you to bring Hickman, Pagonis Senior, Pagonis Junior, Bolnick, and all of them to justice. You know, white folks always talk about bring somebody to justice. Well, we can bring somebody to justice. For the expropriation of our funds. Now, next week, next Wednesday night, Dr. Raymond Winbush. And after they went through their castration ritual and lynching and all and the burning, all the other things they do to us, in retaliation, would any of those white men that were a member of the mob call the Imperial Wizard and ask for a letter thanking the mob for lynching that Negro? Huh? See, that's why I say you have a thinking cap on. When women are violated, it is a matter of duty for every black man to stand up, and every man to stand up, and every religion, and every culture. Now, while I mailed out thank you letters, that wasn't necessary. Everyone say we don't have our thinking caps on. And we don't have a clear definition of what our responsibilities are as men. Now, December 12th was the day everybody said that they want to be behind me or anybody else. And they were behind me, and then they started getting farther and farther behind. They wasn't behind. They said they were behind me, they did.
So far back you couldn't see it. Brother, way back. Way back, brother.
Now, this is what I'm interested in as we go through our final stretch of this case. I told you we get ready to wrap Brawley up next year. We get ready to wrap Brawley up. But let me tell you something. It's going to take African women to wrap Brawley up. Let me repeat that. It's going to take African women to wrap Brawley up. Let me give you an example. Several months ago, you recall that Sister Betty Dodson wrote 2 or 3 articles in the Amsterdam News on Alien Spitzer. Everybody remember that? All right? Those were very powerful articles. All right, now let me tell you what the upshot of what she did. Now, what has Spitzer done? Spitzer is so worried that he may not possibly be re-elected because if you don't support him, he won't be. All right, if you don't support him, he won't be. He is so worried about the fact that he may not be re-elected that instead of doing what he as a racist would like to do, and that is to thank Mario Cuomo, he has instead chosen to endorse Carl McCall. This is what he wanted to do. Okay? But this is what he has done because of the efforts of Betty Dodson. Now, let's multiply that 1,000-fold. Let's say that 1,000 sisters came together and formed an organization called Sisters for Tawana Brawley. All right? Sisters for Tawana Brawley. What impact do you think that would have? All right? What impact do you think that would have? And there is no sister that I know that is for white men raping black women. I know this sister, I'm not down with that. All right? I hope there's no sisters. All right? We got a problem with that. This is something that all of us can be supportive of, certainly stand behind our women on this issue. Now, there is a form in your program that I would ask all sisters before the night is over with to please complete and then give it up in the back before you leave. All right? There's a form. There's a form in the program that I ask do our love offering. I said love offering. Y'all know what that means? We are in the process now of getting ready to bring our keynote speaker in. Let me just simply say this once again. What is done on Wednesday evenings is not for the personal benefit of anyone. It's for the collective benefit of the race. Not for the personal benefit of anyone. Now, we need your continued support because it is not easy to do community forums 52 weeks out of the year, bringing speakers in from all over the country, paying large airline bills, hotels, honorariums, and the whole bit. I don't want anybody to sit here and think that this is a nickel and dime operation. I don't want anybody to sit here and think that. Just because you are coming in here rather than that coming into large place, cathedral, or cabin bus, church, that is not serious. That it is not serious. There are some good preachers in this country, but we must not forget that most Negro preachers were ordained by the white man.
That's right.
To keep you confused.
That's right.
Now, I want to leave you with this. When black people come and stand up for black people, what we do is we shift responsibility to the black person that is standing up for you, but we don't shift support. Y'all hear that? See, we shift responsibility. Well, I don't know why Sharpton ain't doing this. I don't know why Maddox ain't doing that. I don't know why somebody else. That's responsibility. But when it comes to support, it ain't there. I got a million Negroes every week. They go to all kinds of churches. But when they get in trouble, they ain't calling Reverend Huguenot. All right? They ain't calling Reverend Huguenot. But you'll sit there and shift responsibility to matters, but you don't shift no support. That's a big difference. We only shifting responsibility, but we're not shifting support. The support is still there with Butts, who has made Harlem what it is now.
That's right.
The support is still with Flakes, who has made Queens what it is today. And your children have to pay the consequences of what they've done. But you don't shift support. You shift responsibility. Why isn't Maddox doing this? Why isn't Sharpton doing that? But when you get to the white, you never call on Butts to confront the white man. You never call on Flakes to confront the white man. You never call all these other Toms in this town. You never call these Tom politicians to confront the white man. But you don't never give support to those who have to confront the white man. You'll sit up here and I got this some game while these jerk-off Negroes see, I can say all of these things. Because I bled for black folks in New York. All right, I can say that. I'm very pleased tonight, as I have Sister Anderson come up and introduce our speaker, to have him back with us once again. I've told you that's real. I'm going back to practicing law next year. And I want to do something, and I talked to Sister Betty Dawson today. She said, "Your brother, you should not have to do that." You should not have to do that. I mean, I didn't ask for it. We just started talking to you. You shouldn't do that. But I tell you, when I start practicing law again, I'm going to buy a place for black folks. Because see, you won't do it on your own. You won't do for self. All right? So when I get back to practice law, I'm going to charge the kind of fee. Now, when y'all hear that? I'm going to charge the kind of fee where I don't need no chump change. All right? And I'm going to use the fees that I charge. Because if Judge Akbar can charge $500 an hour, I can charge $2,500. Everybody know that. That's real. You find out what the highest practice charge and multiply it times 5. Everybody in town know that. That's the reason why I haven't practiced for 11 years. You can put the 10 best lawyers you know together, I will all count. You know that. So I'm going to go and buy a bill, but I'm not going to, don't come to leave, you ain't got no money. I tell you that. So you know, do not knock on my door if you don't have any money. I have struggled with you for 11 years when it wasn't necessary. So don't tell me nothing. Because I get a baseball bat and beat you out of office myself. Come with that. You ain't got no serious money. You better not be talking to me. Because I'm getting ready to do some serious things. And that's real. You had an opportunity, and you didn't appreciate it. There's nobody else in this town, or in this state, or in this nation representing more people pro bono than I did. That's a fact. And you didn't appreciate it. And then 11 years after that, I'm still that I am struggling with you. So don't come up knocking on my door if you ain't got a pot of gold in your pocket. And I'm worth every nickel of it. Tired of these freebies. Go around and get these milk midgets like butts and flakes. And they can't even rise up to tie my shoes. But that's how ignorant Negroes are in New York.
Tell it like it is.
And I'm not telling you what I think, I'm telling you what I know. But I say that because I promised Dr. Akbar that we're going to fulfill that promise. And I want to bring Sister Anderson back to the podium to welcome our guest for tonight. And I want you, as you always do, to give him a hero's welcome. Sister Anderson.
Thank you, Brother Naim. I'm going to go back to 10 seconds from the brother's time just to send a message to the brothers and sisters who are soliciting thank you notes. What I want the brothers and sisters who want thank you notes to do is to go home, get your best stationery and a check if you have it, and send it to the chairman and say, thank you so much for the thank you notes. We also, not only are we the beneficiaries of love and information sharing from our chairman, we also the benefactors evening of love, information, and support from another genius who's traveled to be with us. For the record, I'm going to just share some of the bios because you know I take so far and wide. For the record, Dr. Naim Akbar is a well-known and well-respected professor, scholar, author, and lecturer in the field of psychology who seeks to address and advance the human development of the African personality with a holistic approach and Islamic Afrocentric perspective. Currently, Dr. Akbar is a clinical psychologist in the Department of Psychology in the Black Studies program at Florida State University. His scholarship is well-renowned and is must-read for anyone who seeks to understand the psychological remnants of slavery on the current attitude and behavior of the descendants of enslaved Africans. Dr. Naim Akbar, we are so pleased to have you, and our sisters and brothers will now stand and give you a UAN welcome. Please read.
It is an honor to be back at UAM. I'm Chairman Maddox. Thank you so very much for this opportunity to be back with you again, and all of the good, loyal people here who are regular attendees to these forums. I certainly am happy to see so many familiar faces from colleagues of the Association of Black Psychologists. I'm extremely honored to have our distinguished elder, Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan, Dr. Ben. I don't want to start calling names. I'll take up the rest of the time that has already been well consumed. But Mother Franklin and Sister Sybil and Sister Kepra, wonderful New York. Yeah, these people are icons. They are icons, and they are highly loved and respected as our distinguished elders all over this country. So I'm really made humble by your presence. In fact, I really think it's rather presumptuous of me to stand up here and try to talk when Dr. Ben is on the front row. I was glad to give him my seat, but I traveled too far to talk. Very much for your presence, and again, I'm very, very honored to be back again. This is probably my 4th or 5th forward to this as a regular stop in my yearly moving around the country. I'm going to be respectful of your time. I know that I know it's Wednesday night and folks have things to do tomorrow, and I'm going to try to be as brief as I possibly can. And hopefully, it'll be too brief. And hopefully I'll be able to, if I can stop quickly enough, I'll give you a couple of chances to ask some questions that I will not necessarily be able to answer, but I'll try anyway. I want to talk about preparation for reparation. Preparation for reparation. You know, the work that I have tried to do over the last 30 years or so of my career has not been anything that I can identify as having any kind of real highly intellectual academic significance. My desire and my struggle has been very simple and very straightforward. I understood very early in my career that the major problem that we face as African people on this planet is at this moment a problem of the mind. It's a psychological problem. Now, it has been created by economic forces, by military forces, by religious forces, by political forces. It's been created by lots of influences. But the influences at this point in history are no longer the major issue that we face as a people. It doesn't mean that racism has gone away. It doesn't mean that economic exploitation and thievery has gone away. It doesn't mean that the systemic processes of political racism have gone away. But what it does mean is that those forces no longer have any more power than we permit them to have by our own psychological condition. And therefore, I believe that the challenge that we face is how to get our minds back. How to get our minds back. Because I'm convinced, you see, the reality is that in spite of all these influences, in spite of all the political oppression, the physical oppression, the economic oppression, in spite of all the things that white folks did, and believe me, they did every damn thing they could conceive of doing. But in spite of that, we are still here. Not only are we still here, if you let us put our minds to something, we've been able to excel in any setting where we've gone. The only way that they can keep us from becoming brilliant scientists and brilliant architects and brilliant scholars and brilliant historians and brilliant archaeologists, the only way they could prevent it was by keeping us from having access to the tools. Once we got the tools, there has been absolutely nothing in Western culture, African culture, Asian culture that we've not only mastered, but we have excelled in. Now, that is a testimony. That's a testimony that no matter how demonic and diabolic and how terroristic they've been, and how terrifying they've been, the point that we don't remember is that ultimately they have not succeeded. They did not do what they had intended to do. The intention was to erase our humanity, erase our creativity, erase our possibility. They wanted to erase our very peoplehood. And they used every device available to them to try to make that happen. But the mere fact that we've been able to demonstrate over and over again that in spite of what they've done, still we rise, still we stand, still we excel, still we master. So my conclusion from that is that white folks aren't the problem. White folks can't stop me. Europeans do not have the long-standing longevity or intellectual power to stop the African mind. They can distort it and they can create obstacles, but I know from the example of our contemporary experience that there is no way for them to stop who we are. Now, I can only argue that because of the evidence. And all of us can look around. I mean, each of us here is a miracle. If they had their way, and if they had succeeded, not one of us would be here. Not one. And the ones who would be here would all look like Clarence Thomas or Condoleezza Rice or somebody of that ilk and of that orientation, whose minds were completely lost, and they were walking around stock-breaking mad, not knowing what they were doing. Now, that would be the consequence. Either that, or we would all be completely self-destructive, stretched out on drugs, locked up in self-destructiveness, killing ourselves in one way or the other. There were all kinds of evidence that we did, but by and large, most of us are here, and here doing well, in spite of everything that has been tried. So the point I want to suggest to you tonight is that the issue of reparations is not an issue of white people initially. Now I'm going to say, what the devil is he talking about? I want to suggest to you that we've got to rethink the issue of reparations. And I want you to understand that the only reason I'm having this discussion is that this is a family talk. I would not say any of this to white people because I want them to remain responsible. I want people to give them hell. I want them to intimidate them, antagonize them, provoke them, do all they possibly can. I want them to stay on their behinds. But I also understand that reparations is not possible or useful until we get our minds back. Until we get our minds back. In fact, I want to suggest to you that it is only when we've been able to form a consensus among us as a community that we deserve it, will we be able to collectively demand it. Okay. You see, we cannot demand it consensually, so therefore they are always able to counter our demand by the majority of us being either quiet or on their side. Condoleezza Rice, Lisa Rice, the other day said that, they don't need no reparations. They now, she's one. They don't need no reparations. They've had affirmative action. They just want somebody to take care of. Somebody to take her and shake her because she's lost her damn mind. Like the idea is that she and Colin Powell and all the rest of them are constantly going saying, boss, don't give them nothing. They don't need anything, boss. You've been good to them Negroes. You've given them affirmative action. You've given them welfare. You've given them integration. You've given all those things. They just want to continue to demand and demand. And basically, they are winning. Even though we have Randall Robinson, we have Johnny Cochran, we have Charles Ogletree, we have all these people, have in Cobra, and all these people who are giving serious thought and serious consideration and studying the legal and the political implications of this whole thing, who are giving it the best of our intellectual capability. The bottom line is that they cannot succeed until we as a people have come together with a consensual mind that not only are we do this, but we must have this. But you see, the difference between us and the Jewish people, us and the Japanese people, is that the Jewish people and the Japanese people respected themselves enough that they were able to collectively acclaim what you did to us was devastating and insulting, and we as human beings will not be dissed like that. And what you tried to do, you didn't succeed, but give me back what you didn't take. Give me back my money. Give me back my resources. Give me back my access to power. Give it back to me. And as absurd as the demand might have been, because they had a collective, consensual voice, Volkswagen, Philips, and all of these German companies who weren't even in real power at that time are willing to give retroactively billions of dollars to the Jewish people because the Jewish people, first of all, demanded it on the basis of their consensual self-acceptance. But nobody will respond to your need until you have required it of them, until you have respected and decided that this is something you need for yourself. Now, I want to suggest to you that reparations in any form, material, institutional, or any other form, will never be able to heal the damage of what has happened to us psychologically and spiritually. Nobody can heal that but us. We have got to take the responsibility for working on healing our own minds, healing our own psychology, healing our own spirits. You know, there's this bizarre notion we have that the very people who are in fact the directly responsible for our condition, we somehow believe that they can solve the problem. Now, we know, for an example, that these people spent most of our history in America forbidding us to learn anything. I mean, literacy was not even authorized in the world for African people until about 200 years ago, 100 years ago. And I mean, the authorization of it was very limited because up until the Emancipation Proclamation, in most of the United States, where most of the Africans live, reading literacy of any form was considered criminal. And they plucked out your eyes, they beat you, they killed you for even learning how to read. And then, of course, after much protest and much demand, and interestingly enough, an initial effort to do something for ourselves. So we had to steal access to reading skills. We had to steal access to acquiring information. We had to steal and take away those things that began to provide us with intellectual capability. And then as we began to take them, they began to rally behind it to facilitate what we were already taking. Frederick Douglass, he had one mistress who taught him to read a little something before he ran away from the plantation, but basically he had to steal that skill. Every one of the slaves who learned to read usually learned to read it by somehow surreptitiously taking it out, telling them they wanted to know about the Bible, or somehow giving them some type of brown-nosing comedian posture in order to make them give you access to these opportunities. But we had to take the opportunity before they gave an opportunity. When they found out we were going to learn anyway, then they created institutions to teach us. So what are they going to teach us? How to get free? so we can operate in our self-interest as they operate in their self-interest? You think they're going to tell you that you were the originators of civilization? They're going to tell you that you built the empires that they're imitating? You think they're going to put into your educational system a concept that lets you understand that the whole concept of intellectual and scholarly development on this planet began in Africa by Africans and still stands today as evidence of what Africans do? You really and truly believe that? If so, you need to make an appointment with me and my psychologist colleagues. We are here for you. You need serious help. Perhaps an lobotomy to take your brain out, because the one you have is still dysfunction. It continues. We made the serious error in the 1950s and 1960s in believing that, okay, they won't educate us by ourselves. We segregate. So we want to really learn now. And the way we really want to learn is that we want to go to school with them. So 20 years, 30 years of sending our babies to get bricks stolen out of them, sending our people to be humiliated, have to send in the National Guard to get one or two, because we actually believed that going to school with them would give us access to education. Now, I'm suggesting to you that there is a psychological problem here. One that has taken away our confidence in what we can do, and an increased dependence and belief that they will take care of our problems, that they will educate our children, that they will in fact give us legal justice in their legal system. As Brother Maddox said here tonight, the bottom line is that you can go to them for justice from now on. It's not going to come until you are able to build the kind of constituency whereby you can speak with the voice of power. These people do not listen to morality. European Americans do not have a moral conscience. They listen only to physical conscience, and they listen to only physical and material resources. That's why the World Trade Center came down, because someone understood that the population. Look, can you imagine a situation where the majority of the world's people, representatives from the United Nations who constitute the only legally constructed group of nations worldwide, who represent some sense of statement and some sense of standard about what is civilized conduct. This organization organized an international conference on racism because they had concluded around the world, in Africa, in Asia, in many parts of the Caribbean, South America, all over the world, they've concluded that the major problem that we face on this planet today is racism. And it is primarily led by the United States of America. Now this is the majority of people who are okay? This is like most folks on the planet, other than the world's primary racists, concluded this. Now, one would have expected that a civilized, moral person would have responded by saying, I have a right to defend myself. I want to sit with to refuse to sit to discuss a problem that everybody in the world sees except you. You know, one of the reasons we know that people are crazy when they go crazy, because they're the only ones seeing things that nobody sees but them. So one would have suspected that someone would have gone and pulled the coattail of Americans and said, check it out. Nobody thinks you're innocent but you. Could it be that you are hallucinating and seeing something that is not there? But nobody bothered because of the idea that these people have the right to define reality despite the majority of the planet. My point is this. My point is that America does not respond to either a legal edict or a moral edict. That's right. America only responds to power. That's right. 2 weeks later, a group of people allegedly who view themselves as dissed and ignored by America took a pocket knife, not one military piece of equipment, and as we all know, you in New York know very painfully, brought a kind of devastation against the most powerful nation in the world that nobody believed it had happened. And the question was still, why? Why would they do that to us? The idea is that we do not yet appreciate that you don't expect people incapable of moral conduct to operate in a moral way. And what we should learn is that people, after a while, regardless of their condition, regardless of their weakness, regardless of their holy state, will only take disrespect and a disrespect of their dignity so long. That's right. And dignified people will stand up in opposition. Now, I want to suggest to you that the only way that we can prepare for reparation is that as a people, we have got to work on healing ourselves. 4 things I want to share with you. 5, very quickly. One is that, and I deal with this all the time. So if you've heard me before, you've heard this, but this is my #1 demand. It's the title of my last book. By the way, the books came, they got lost. They're someplace in somebody's office. They didn't get them here, so I don't have the books tonight. But my last book, Know Thyself, deals with this whole thing that goes back to the ancient people of Kemet, that the foundation of all power and knowledge is self-knowledge. Knowing who we are is the foundation of human power. In other words, nothing else comes before that's there. You've got to have that before you can get economics. Because like us, you can get economics and not know what the hell to do with it. And that's the situation we are. We got billions of dollars. Over the next few weeks, we will buy more Polo, Donna Karan, Air Jordan than anybody else in America. We will drink more Hennessy over the next 3 or 4 weeks than anybody else in America. We will have more shoes, more junk, more suits, more t-shirts, more sweatsuits, more jogging suits, more garbage than any other group in America. But we don't own one school, one hospital, one research facility, one institution, one think tank. We don't even own an endowed chair to support a scholar studying how to get us free. We own nothing that we need to survive, but we got more junk than anybody on the planet. So that shows you, even when we've got money, if you don't have your mind, you don't know what to do with it. Bob Johnson, BET, $1 billion. $1 billion. The worst enemy of black people in America other than Clarence Thomas. Psychologically, he provides a stage and a forum for the most destructive images of our people in the world. Why your daughter wants to be a skeezer, why she enjoys being the B word, demonstrations and provocations and misinformation in order to drive our young people crazy. And the power, the definition of his power comes from people like Viacom, who understands that he has the most powerful access to the most important source of the next generation's power on the planet. So they give $1 billion to continue to do what he's doing, because in that way they can ensure this may be our last generation. But my point is, if we really were aware of who we are, not just in terms of what our beloved scholars, Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben, and Dr. Jeffries, and Brother Amos Wilson, and Dr. Ivan Van Sertle, and David Son, all of these wonderful people who've given us so much in terms of the historical information, in terms of the conceptual information. But what we don't appreciate is just limited things that come from common sense. The common sense of realizing that we are comparable to no other group in terms of what we've been able to survive. We don't understand, self-knowledge would help us understand that we have power that we don't know anything about, because we are unconscious of the resources I talked about at the beginning of my talk, about how we got to be where we are. We don't understand what makes us continue to rise, continue to bounce back. Look at us, look at our organizations. Look at how we have all this slavery stuff of tearing each other down, stabbing each other in the back. Every time we get an organization going, we tear it down. How we don't back people who stand up. Look at us. We shouldn't even be here. We had a Martin Luther King, but how many people stood behind him? Do you realize those Negroes in Atlanta wouldn't touch Dr. King with a 10-foot pole until white folks said he was all right? He never had a successful campaign among our bourgeois academic brothers and sisters at Morehouse, Clark, AU, Spelman in Atlanta, because they were scared that he was a troublemaker, including his daddy. His daddy didn't want to have nothing to do with him because they thought he was a radical troublemaker. And it was only after white folks said, this boy's all right. He's a give him a Peace Prize. He's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Once that happened, then they began to change the whole story. So the point is that we don't stand behind our people. We can celebrate our great people tonight. We can celebrate Malcolm. We can celebrate Elijah Muhammad. But when they were here, where were you? Where is your dad and your mom and your aunts and your uncles? That was one or two people out yelling and pushing out front. But we weren't there. And so when we look at those kinds of things, the question becomes, how do we continue to produce those kinds of people? How do we continue to come back even when we ought to be dead? And those are the issues that have to do with the kind of self-knowledge that lets us appreciate the nature of the African substance. The nature of the African substance. Very often we get caught up with the form and not appreciate the essence. We get impressed by looking African. We get impressed by pictures of the Meta Netra on our walls. We get impressed by how many dashikis we own. We get impressed by things being able to speak a few words of Swahili. But what we don't appreciate, that's simply the form of trying to tell us we need to know more about ourselves. We need to know how we operate inside in order to appreciate what the meaning of these things are on the outside. Self-knowledge is necessary for restoration. Until we know who we are as a people, we will not be able to be adequately prepared for reparations or any other kind of liberation. Secondly, in order to prepare ourselves, we must restore self-love. Now, I talked about this. It's so hard to not understand that the kind of love that we give white people is really the kind of love we should be giving ourselves. We really love them. And so much so that when we get angry with them, we hit each other. Now that's love. We can forgive them no matter what they do. It doesn't matter. We get mad for a minute and then we forgive them. But we don't forgive them and learn and grow and defend ourselves against future attacks. We keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Now listen, no one, and I let you know, I'm sure there are those in here who have relatives who died in the WTC. I'm sure that you have friends, there are people who are very close to us who were destroyed that day. Unfortunately, because we are so out of touch, we actually begin to believe that that becomes our problem with George Bush. We really begin to believe that they will look at us, whoever did it. Whoever did it. It might have been James McVeigh, it could have been like, some other domestic group, it could have been Muslims, it could have been Christian revolutionaries, it could have been fascists, it could have been George Bush's daughters. I don't know. It could have been Cheney. Nobody's seen him since. You don't know who it was. The idea is that whoever did it, the bottom line is that we were victims, but we were not the target. And no matter what happened, in fact, if it had been a building in Harlem and 5,000 black people had been killed, you wouldn't have heard about it for about 2 hours and it would have been off the air. Why are you saying that? Why do you believe that's true? Because more than 5,000 black people have been killed century after century, decade after decade in this country. Every day, thousands of black people are dying from AIDS because of the lack of medical resources that this country has access to. Every year in this country, black babies are dying before they're 1 day or 1 year old because of the whole infant mortality rate is overwhelmingly higher than many other so-called non-technological countries in the world. People starving, black people dying here, thousands and thousands and thousands every day. Nearly 2 million black men locked up in prisons around this country, locked up for having one rock of crack cocaine. One little teeny-weeny partial ounce that they got from somebody that probably ain't even all cocaine. But the idea is that while they go to prison for that, the white boy on the east side doesn't go to prison for like having 2 ounces or a pound of powder cocaine. So that's murder. That's terror. Diablo's death. Terror. The devil does this. Terror. So don't give me this stuff about we so sad because we've been terrorized for the first time. And therefore that means we're all Americans now. God bless America. I'm not everybody here. Trust me. In fact, you probably found out already. That lasted about 2 weeks of minimal enthusiasm. And right now, and increasingly over the next few days, we will be going back to business as usual. In fact, the scary thing is that all those things that you're rallying around to support them in doing, including, by the way, the Congressional Black Caucus. I have real problems with the fact that they're being sucked up into this food. Every one of those terrorist laws will come back to haunt us. We get so much more upset about what happens to white people than we do about what happens to others. Disappearing. Black student unions disappearing. Our children increasingly saying, I believe firmly that I am a black psychologist. You are a black man. You must please sit down black. Because if you don't, you really believe that you're a byproduct of Sigmund Freud. You believe that Skinner named you. You believe that you're a product of European historians. You believe that you came out of the classical European music. You believe that your ideas and your creativity. You believe, like Michael Jackson, that his ability to do the moonwalk was something that was taught to him by Fred Astaire. And that's how he dedicated his book called Moonwalk, his autobiography. He dedicated it to Fred Astaire. He's crazy too. You understand? Because we don't understand the importance of loving ourselves. So self-love becomes this process of preparing ourselves once we know who we are. Second, third, nobody ultimately can free the inner slave but us. We must emancipate the slave in us. What do you mean? I mean that we still exalt white people to such an incredibly high level that we, by implication, disrespect ourselves. I have heard over and over again numbers of our young people, and mostly black people, who argue against what Dr. Ben's work has done, what Dr. Clark was able to do with his research, have argued against Ivan Van Sertima's research and work, and argue it using evidence from white people. White people, by their own admission, who chose to distort and omit so they could build a fictitious history about themselves. You raise questions with us that you never raised with white people. You challenge us in ways that you never challenge white people. Because white people are still high, exalted, the ones you revere the most. That image of God as a white man still haunts you. Even those of you who are Muslims, you still glorify in those Arab Muslims because they look whiter than you do as being the real experts on Islam. Why don't you look to Morocco Drew Ali? Why don't you look to Elijah Muhammad? These are the ones who took Islam and made it workable. Workable. Yeah, you can speak Arabic, but how many black people has that free speaking Arabic? Yes, you can pray your prayers in Arabic, but how many black people has that free or will free? It was the understanding of how to transform your consciousness and see God in you. Yes, you can go to church, but the churches that worked were people who understood it ain't about the sweet by and by. It's about the sweet now and now. It's about the people who put the church in the streets. It's about the people who understood that it wasn't about this Caucasian image of God. It was about the God in us and in our people that comes out of Israel. We need this mythology about freeing the Israelis, freeing the Israelites, letting them out of captivity, looking at that as a great miracle. Moses went to Pharaoh, said, "Let my people go." Went up in the mountain, the fire talked to the rock wrote the scripture, came back down, and Moses had the leadership to free the people there. Look, fool. Even if that's true, it ain't them Jews you look at on the news today. By the way, is there a Jewish convention going on in New York this weekend or something? And I was in Midtown today. I saw more yarmulkes than I've ever seen before in my life. I don't know, are they coming? Are they taking? Well, I don't know what's happening, you know. The point is that, well, he was right, but that got him in trouble by sitting there. But the point is that must understand that even our concept of the allegory, is not used to our advancement. You see, we are captives in Babylon.
That's right.
We are the captives in so-called Egypt. Not Kemet, Egypt.
That's right.
Egypt is different from Kemet. Kemet is the black land. Egypt was the stolen land. So even when the story is told about Egypt, it's an allegory that doesn't have to do with you.
That's right.
When you put it back into its proper context, then you understand that the liberation of the people from the captive land represents you.
That's right.
You don't see God in you. You don't see your own possibilities for resurrection in you. You looking for a white man to get up out the grave. All of you are right now, get ready with your Christmas decorations. Got you a little white baby in the manger. Got you some jackasses and some white angels. And waiting for the white Savior to come. Don't you know who the Savior is? You are the Savior. Dr. Ben is the Savior. Dr. Akbar was the Savior. The baby of God was the Savior. Marcus Garvey was the Savior. Galvanising was the Savior. Harriet Tubman was the Savior. Max Taylor was the Savior. These are the Saviors. These are the ones who came back after crucifixion. Rome was stolen away. Got up and declared to the world, life is eternal for the African mind, right here in the land of God. These are the ones. People right now say, oh, he's tripping. He's lost his mind. You know, I can go along with a lot of that stuff, but no, we can't be Jesus. We really can't be the Israelites. We can't be the people in the Bible. Trust me. You're the people in the Bible, you're the people in the Quran, you're the people in all of the divine revealed scriptures. You are the ones they're talking about in terms of the spiritual rebirth. But self-love makes us elevate the white interpretation and lose our own. Now, I don't know about you, and you may know something I don't know because I stopped watching this stuff very early. But as far as I've been able to determine, no one yet has produced any evidence to show that Osama bin Laden did what he did. Okay? I don't defend him if he did it. I don't defend anybody who was involved with the whole process. I think it's really a dirty way to fight, basically. But you have to do what you have to do when you got, whatever. But the idea is that I simply want to know that the killing of these thousands of people is based upon facts. Now, the bottom line is that the only eyewitnesses died on 9/11 at the point of impact. Those are the only people who know who was there. And so everything else is a fabricated, created story. Now, it could be true, but there is no substantial evidence to suggest that it is necessarily true. But people have accepted hook, line, and sinker what these lying people, and you know they lie. They lied about Diallo, they lied about everything they do, they lied about your mama, they lied about you, they lied about us being stupid, unintelligent, incapable, they lied, and suddenly you're going to believe them about something as crucial as this. You might, I won't. You have to believe it because the white folks are still God. They're the ones who create reality. They're the ones who you exalt. They're the ones who somehow continue to be the ones who you look to for every conceivable solution. I'm suggesting to you, you got to free the African slave.
That's right.
You've got to let the African slave go free. And it doesn't mean that you reject everything that Europeans say, or do. It simply means that you must evaluate everything Europeans say or do in the light of your own history, your own reasoning, and your own well-being. Everything they do, I interpret. How will this affect Africans? What is the meaning of this for Africans? When I go to the airport, I'm not worried about what's going to happen to America when they stand in line for hours and go through your bags and look at your dirty underwear and all that stuff. The only thing I'm saying is that I know in a few days, the only people who will be getting stopped will be Africans. And they'll be able to do it with immunity. They'll be able to search you wherever they want to. And you are letting them do that. And then they are telling you they're going to do away with the legal system and have a military tribunals, which means you have no rights, no recourse, no appeal, no defense. They can do with you whatever they please. Now, I'm not interested in no Arabs and no Afghanis and nobody. I'm interested in, like, I know in just a few days, that's going to be the black drug dealer, supposedly. That's going to be the black thief, supposedly. That's going to be the black scholar, supposedly. That's going to be Dr. Jeffries again. That's going to be Dr. Ben being contested. That's going to be Naim Akbar being challenged. That's going to be them bringing us before some committee, locking us up without any kind of charge until they decide they're going to be finished with us. I'm telling you what our history has shown us. And who's going to defend me? Who's going to protect me? I can't depend on you. You love white folks too much. Is Clarence Thomas going to stand up and say this is constitutionally unsound? No, he won't. He'll say burn him, crucify him, crucify him. The bottom line is that we have no recourse, and watching these things happen before our very eyes shows me that the slave has not been freed. Secondly, we are overly dependent. I talked about that on the board. You know, we depend on them to educate us and to provide us with a political agenda, to provide us with an intellectual agenda. To everything we do, we depend upon them to solve it. Even, and Brother Chairman Maddox was absolutely correct. Reparations will never come through a legal system, especially one that they run. You're going to go to them and convince them that they were guilty, and then the judge, the jury, the writers of the Constitution, the Supreme Court, the interpreters, you've got to be out of your mind. I mean, if you really believe it. Now, it is possible to understand that and still strategically engage in the battle, because to keep it conscious is an important means of teaching. You teach our people, you teach them that we are watching you. You're being watched. You're not going to get away with this forever. We put a reality into being. We conceive a reality that ultimately we can make to come into fruition. So the idea then is to somehow continue to do that, but certainly you cannot in your right mind to expect that their legal system is going to do it. It's going to take a world court. That's why the the racism conference was the beginning step of coalescing people around the world who control natural resources, who control oil, who control climate, who control what they value. They value the bottom line. They say, we're going to mess up your economy if you don't do the right thing. When that kind of group begins to come together with a consensus from us, then we can talk about being able to demand reparations and to get those resources. Number 4, okay, we talk about self-knowledge, self-love, freeing the inner slave. Number 4 is self-determination. Again, doing for us what we need to do, deciding where we need to go and going there. Stop begging other people to give us direction for ourselves. We need our own direction, our own agenda, and that's the only way we can begin to get free. And last but not least, and this is a natural consequence of once we know who we are, once we love who we are, once we have freed the slave and gotten these free people again, then we can begin to stand together united. The unity piece, socially, that is the reflection of the psychological wholeness. Once we become psychologically whole again, then we are equipped to join hands with people who share our self-interest, to unite with them. Stop dissing people because they don't go to your church, because they don't come to your conference, because they don't show up with your outfit, because they are a part of your fraternity, they are a part of your sorority, they are not an alumnus of Columbia, they are not an alumnus of NYU, they don't understand what you know about history, they don't understand what you know about psychology. Stop dogging each other about superficial stuff. Look, I have a request. I would like us to mobilize and kill Willie Lynch tonight. Let's kill him. Let's kill the devil. That devil that has us fighting among ourselves. Brothers versus sisters. Light skin versus dark skin. Locked hair versus unlocked hair. Perms versus braids. Tall versus short. Athletes versus non-athletes. Scholars versus illiterates. Junkies versus users. The bottom line is that we are all in this mess together. And everybody, number one, everybody's got a problem. Nobody is perfect. Everybody's got problems. Why? You came off the plantation, fool. You don't get off the plantation for 400 years and not have problems. You a little crazy. Yeah, even the best of you, crazy. Even the oldest one, crazy. Even the youngest one, crazy. Even the most pretty one, crazy. That does not excuse the fact that you've got responsibility to try to do the best you can do. To try to bring the little bit you've got and to put it on the table. Stop worrying about, well, you know, he used to go with that sister who was a part of the organization and they just tore up the whole organization. You know, I understand he used to snort a little cocaine back in the old time. I know that sister's looking for her another husband. That's the only reason she's in it. That ain't your business, fool. You need to be looking for something for yourself. Look for you a good doctor to get you some medication to get your mind straight. You understand? Look, I don't have any problem with anybody who's a good Baptist. If you know you are a black Baptist, then you my friend. Come on in here. Let's stand together. I don't have any problems with Methodists or Catholics or Episcopalians. I don't have any problems with Hanafi Muslims or Sunni Muslims, Farrakhan Muslims, Wallace Muhammad Muslims. I ain't into your differences. I want to know, can you stand together for our people when the battle goes down? Because, as Malcolm said a long time ago, they are not looking at you because you Hebrew. They're not looking for you because you're Muslim. They're not looking for you because you're Baptist or Methodist. They're not looking for you because you're Alpha or Kappa or Jew or Republican or Democrat. They're looking for you because you're black. They are looking for Africans. The problem today is the same as was 200 years ago. They are looking for escaped Africans. Wanted, dead or alive, must be captured. Bring back the escaped Africans. They don't want to see the escaped Baptists, the escaped Methodists, the escaped college graduates, the escaped PhDs. Nobody care how long you live in New York. You are there looking for you along with the Mississippi, Georgians, South Carolinians, and all the rest of them. They don't know the difference in you and anybody else. But our minds makes us work against our unity. And ultimately, our power is being able to stand together. Let's look at what each person can bring to the table. Don't worry about the shortcomings. If you worry about the shortcomings, nobody would be where we are. We spend so much time. Well, he doesn't really ideologically represent a real Pan-Africanist position because, he was with the Muslims for a long time. And therefore, he's kind of confused with that religious stuff. This brother here, he goes to church every Sunday and he be preaching and singing them songs and they believe in Jesus and stuff. And, that means that means that they got something that you don't have to bring to the table. They're in an arena where you aren't there. Let's take what they've got, respect it, understand that we all got something to give, respect it, put it together, let's work together, and I trust you. Once we understand that we deserve reparations, once we understand consensually that we must get reparations, then we will be prepared to get it. Thank you so much. Peace be with you.
A few of us, my name is Brother Tutu. A few of us who have been in the long haul knows that the psyche is the most important thing. When are we going to start working on our psyche?
Thank you. Thank you.
The first to us, some of us know the psyche is the most important thing. When are we going to start working on our psyche? That's what I'm doing tonight. You see, that's what this is. This kind of gathering, this kind of presence, this is not about Naim Akbar strutting out what Naim Akbar knows about psychology. This isn't about what I am doing. This is about us trying to have group therapy. This is group therapy. Because I believe correctly that the way to master our minds, as it is with every other people on the earth, is through awareness. The more we know about who we are, that is the equipment that we need to free ourselves. So I believe that we are working on our minds. Every time you expose yourself to new information, listen to the speakers who come to this forum and somehow take from them those things that will make a difference. That's the way we work on our psyches. Okay?
And we want to thank our brother genius, Dr. Naim Akbar, for reminding us to know ourselves. We're going to ask Dr. Akbar to stay with us on the stage. Stay with us on the stage, if you will. And part of knowing ourselves, sisters and brothers, let us stand and give our affirmation.